Man, this story right here. It's one of those that'll make you stop and think. Linda Creed, the woman behind some of the greatest soul lyrics ever written. She gave us, "People make the world go round. You are everything. Betcha by golly wow. And even the greatest love of all." But the wild part, most people don't even know her name. She wasn't chasing fame. She was chasing feelings, writing words that came straight from the heart. While others stood in the spotlight, Linda was the quiet storm behind the soundtracks of our lives. So how did a woman who wrote so many timeless hits fade into history's background? Let's get into her story right now. Let me know where you're watching this from in the comments. Grab yourself a warm drink, maybe a cup of water or tea, sit back, and let's start this journey together. Linda Creed's story begins in the heart of Philadelphia, a city that was, even back in the 1950 decade, buzzing with rhythm, gospel choirs, and that raw, emotional thing people would later call Philly soul. She was born on the 6th of December 1948 into a modest Jewish family in the Mount Airy neighborhood. It wasn't a rich family, but it was full of culture, music, and community. Her parents didn't come from the music business. They were everyday folks who believed in hard work and education. But Linda, man, she had something different running through her veins. From a young age, she was drawn to melodies the way some kids are drawn to mischief. While other kids were outside jumping rope or hanging out on the block, Linda was inside writing little poems, humming tunes, and daydreaming about the radio stars she heard every night. People around her said she had that sparkle, not loud or showy, but deep. She was quiet, observant, and emotional. She listened, really listened to people, their stories, their heartbreaks. That's what later made her such a powerful lyricist. Growing up in Philadelphia in the 1950 decade meant being surrounded by soul, jazz, and early R&B. The radio stations blasted everything from Ray Charles to the Drifters, and you could walk down any street and hear harmonies floating out of someone's window. The city itself was alive with rhythm. Man, you had the roots of Gamble and Huff's movement slowly brewing, the sound of doo-wop groups practicing on corners, the gospel choirs on Sunday mornings filling churches with pure emotion. Linda soaked all of that in like a sponge. At Germantown High School, she started to stand out. She wasn't just another student, she was that girl who wrote songs. Teachers noticed her handwriting full of lyrics. Her notebooks packed with rhymes and lines that didn't sound like a teenager's, they sounded like someone twice her age. She'd hang around the music room after class, trying out melodies on the piano, talking to the band kids, always chasing that perfect line that made people feel something. But it wasn't easy. Back then, the music business was dominated by men, producers, writers, arrangers, executives. And for a young white Jewish girl from Philly trying to write soul music, that was unheard of. People didn't know what to make of her. Some thought she was out of place. Others didn't take her seriously. But Linda didn't care. She wasn't trying to prove she belonged, she just wanted to write what she felt. You know how some people find their calling early? That was Linda. The moment she realized that lyrics could make people cry, heal, or fall in love, she was hooked. She started writing constantly at home, at school, anywhere she could find a scrap of paper. Her friends said she'd get lost in her own world, whispering words to herself, rearranging them until they sounded just right. Her early inspirations were the great vocalists, Dionne Warwick, Aretha Franklin, Gladys Knight women, who sang about love with honesty and pain. But Linda didn't want to be the one singing. She wanted to be the one behind the song, shaping the story, giving the emotion its words. That right there already showed her humility. By her late teens, Linda began sneaking into local music events around Philly. She'd hang out with musicians, pass around her lyrics, and sometimes convince someone to try turning them into melodies. Most of them didn't go anywhere, but she was learning the ropes, how sessions worked, how producers thought, how the industry could chew people up if they weren't careful. And then, man, fate stepped in. Through a network of Philly musicians, Linda's writing made its way to a man who would change her life, Tom Bell. Tom was already gaining a reputation as one of the sharpest producers and arrangers in the city, blending classical music with R&B to create something elegant and soulful. When he saw Linda's lyrics, he could tell this wasn't just some hobbyist. Her writing had depth. Her lines weren't just catchy, they were cinematic. Their first meeting was pure synergy. Tom would sit at the piano, playing these lush, orchestral chords, and Linda would start crafting stories on top of them. It was like they spoke the same emotional language, even though they came from totally different worlds. That collaboration, Bell's musical genius and Creed's poetic sensitivity, would soon become one of the greatest songwriting partnerships in soul music history. But at that time, neither of them knew how far it would go. Linda was still just a young woman chasing her dream, working day jobs and writing songs by night. She wasn't thinking about money or fame, she was chasing connection. Her words came from a place of truth, heartbreak, hope, and longing. And maybe that's what made her so special. While the rest of the industry was busy trying to write hits, Linda was trying to write honesty. She once said in an interview that she didn't care if a song became popular, she cared if it made someone feel something. That's the kind of heart you can't fake, man. By the end of the 1960 decade, Linda Creed was no longer just a dreamer scribbling lyrics in notebooks. She was stepping into the scene, ready to shape the sound of a whole era. What started as a girl's quiet passion was about to explode into the world through some of the smoothest, most emotional soul records ever made. And the wild part? Her rise hadn't even truly begun yet. So here's where the magic really started, man. Late 1960 into early 1970, Linda Creed stepped straight into the storm that would define Philadelphia's golden age of soul. By that time, her connection with Tom Bell had grown into something powerful, not romantic, but creative chemistry on another level. They were like musical twins. Tom would craft these sophisticated, lush arrangements, full of strings and horns, and Linda would come in with words that made it all human, warm, vulnerable, spiritual. Their first big break came with a group that was just starting to make noise in Philly, the Stylistics. These guys had the smoothest harmonies, and under Tom Bell's direction, they became the perfect vessel for Linda's lyric. It was like a match made in heaven. Russell Tompkins, Jr.'s soaring falsetto carrying Linda's delicate words straight into people's hearts. Their first collaboration, Stop, Look, Listen, to Your Heart, hit like lightning. Released in 1971, it wasn't just a love song, it was a message about slowing down and really feeling what matters. That was Linda all the way. Her lyrics weren't just about romance, they were about emotional truth. She gave love songs a kind of mindfulness, decades before people started using that word. Then came, You Are Everything. Man, that one changed the game. It's the kind of song that feels like it's been here forever. That chorus, simple, direct, universal. Linda knew how to take something deeply personal and make it feel like everyone's story. You could be young, old, heartbroken, newly in love. That song hit every soul the same way. And suddenly people around the business started asking, who's this girl writing all these hits? But Linda didn't care much for attention. She was shy, always focused on the next lyric, the next melody. Tom Bell would sometimes brag about her in interviews, saying she had a poet's heart and a fighter's will. By now, her songs were all over the radio. Philly radio stations couldn't go a day without spinning something she wrote. The industry started noticing that behind every beautiful Stylistics record, there was that same name in the credits, Linda Creed. But even with that success, she wasn't satisfied. She wanted to grow, to experiment, to tell stories that went deeper. And that's when she and Tom Bell decided to push things even further. With their confidence rising, Linda and Tom began shaping what people now call the signature Philly soul sound. It was classy but emotional, lush strings, jazz chords, gospel roots, and lyrics that hit straight to the heart. They were elevating soul music into something cinematic, and Linda's pen was right at the center of it all. Their next masterpiece came in 1972, Betcha by Golly Wow. Man, what a song! From the title alone, you can feel that old-school innocence mixed with pure poetry. Linda didn't just write about love like everyone else, she wrote about a feeling that felt too big for words. That's why people connected to her. She had that rare ability to make the simple sound divine. And she wasn't stopping there. She and Tom followed it up with Break Up to Make Up, and People Make the World Go Round. That last one, that was different. That song had soul and social consciousness. Linda was watching the early 1970 decade, the protests, the changes, the confusion, and she turned it into art. The line, "People make the world go round," became more than just lyrics. It was a truth that crossed generations. Her work was earning respect from every corner of the industry. Other writers and producers were quietly studying her phrasing, her tone, her way of wrapping sadness and hope together in the same sentence. She could make heartbreak sound beautiful. What's crazy is, even at her peak, Linda was still that same humble Philly girl. She didn't dress like a star. She didn't show off. If you met her at a recording session, you might not even know she was the Linda Creed. She'd sit quietly in the corner with a notebook, tapping a pen, mouthing lyrics under her breath while Tom played chords on the piano. Every now and then, she'd look up and say softly, "Try this line instead." And boom, another classic. By 1973, the Stylistics had become international stars, and Linda's name was attached to nearly every one of their biggest records. She wasn't just writing songs anymore, she was shaping emotions for a whole generation. Her words gave voice to love, loss, and everyday beauty in a way few songwriters could ever match. But man, the road ahead wasn't just golden lights and #1 hits, because when you fly that high, something always comes along to test your strength. And for Linda Creed, that next chapter would take her from the studio's bright glow into one of the toughest battles of her life. By the time 1973 rolled around, Linda Creed had become one of the most important lyricists in the entire Philadelphia scene, even if most listeners didn't realize it. Her partnership with Tom Bell was unstoppable. Together, they had given the Stylistics a sound that was both sophisticated and deeply emotional, the kind of music that felt like silk and soul all at once. People called it Philly soul, but in truth, it was more than just a genre. It was a feeling. Linda was now in her mid-20s, young, vibrant, and quietly building a catalog that most songwriters could only dream of. And man, the hits just kept coming. Every time Tom Bell sat down at a piano, he'd look at her and say, "What do you feel today?" And from there, a story would unfold. Their next wave of success came fast and hard. "You Make Me Feel Brand New" was one of those songs that just stopped people in their tracks. The first time it played on the radio, it was like time froze. The strings, the harmonies, that tender duet between Russell Tompkins Jr. and Arian Love, it was pure magic. And those lyrics, they were straight from Linda's heart. The line, "God bless you, you make me feel brand new," wasn't just poetic, it was spiritual. Linda said once in an interview that she believed in writing from the soul, not from the charts. And that's what made her different. She didn't chase trends, she chased truth. Her words were clean, simple, and drenched in emotion. That's why people remember those songs decades later. At this point, her name was appearing on more and more records. "Betcha by Golly Wow" had already become an anthem, and "Break Up to Make Up" was breaking hearts all over the country. Couples were quoting her lyrics in love letters, DJs were dedicating her songs on late-night radio, and singers were lining up to record something that had her touch. But even as her songs climbed the charts, Linda stayed grounded. She wasn't out there doing interviews or soaking up the spotlight. She let the music speak. She preferred being in the background, crafting lines that would carry people through their best and worst days. That humility, man, it was rare, especially in an era when ego ran wild in the industry. Her writing sessions with Tom Bell became legendary. He'd start playing those lush arrangements, violins sweeping, horns crying, bass lines grooving, and she'd just close her eyes and start whispering phrases until one stuck. Sometimes it came out like a prayer, other times like a diary entry, but every single time, it came out real. That's what made songs like "Rock and Roll Baby" and "You'll Never Get to Heaven If You Break My Heart" hit so hard. They weren't just words, they were lived emotions, filtered through Linda's empathy. She could make a listener feel like she'd been inside their heart, translating what they never had the words to say. As the hits piled up, so did the respect. Inside the industry, people knew. Songwriters whispered about her gift. Artists admired her pen. Even producers who rarely gave credit were calling her a poet in the truest sense. But she still wasn't a household name. The music world has always been funny like that. The loudest voices get the fame, while the quiet geniuses build the foundation. Linda was one of those quiet geniuses. Around this time, Philly International Records was exploding. Gamble and Huff were leading the charge with acts like Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, the OJs, and Teddy Pendergrass. Linda wasn't officially part of their label, but her songs were shaping the same emotional space. Her and Tom Bell's style became the elegant, romantic side of the Philly sound music for lovers, dreamers, and anyone who believed that soul could still be tender. When People Make the World Go Round dropped, it felt like she'd stepped into a new lane. It wasn't just another love song, it was social commentary. The Vietnam War, inflation, urban tension, people were stressed, and that song captured the mood of an entire generation. Linda managed to say something profound without preaching. She reminded everyone that despite all the chaos, it was still human emotion, people that made life turn. That song got covered by everyone from Michael Jackson to jazz artists decades later. It proved she could write beyond romance, she could write about life itself. And yet, even with all these achievements, Linda was never fully recognized outside the music circles. Interviews focused on the performers, not the pen. Radio hosts introduced the singers but skipped the songwriter's name. It was a pattern she accepted, but it still stung a little. She once told a friend, "As long as people feel it, that's enough." Still, you could tell she had that quiet longing to be remembered. She didn't need awards or fame, but she wanted her words to matter, to last. And man, they did. The mid-1970 decade marked her absolute peak. Her songs were everywhere: weddings, roller rinks, slow dance nights, even TV shows. If you lived through that time, chances are Linda Creed's lyrics were part of your memories, even if you didn't know it. But here's the thing about life: just when everything seems perfect, the universe throws a curveball. Linda's music was soaring higher than ever, but her personal life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. Because behind those timeless love songs, behind the poetic smile and gentle spirit, something dark was waiting. Something that would test not only her strength as a songwriter, but her strength as a human being. As the 1970 decade rolled forward, Linda Creed's words were everywhere: the radio, jukeboxes, weddings, slow dances, even the soundtracks of first heartbreaks. She and Tom Bell had built a musical empire based not on fame, but on feeling. But as her career soared, Linda's life started to take a turn that would test every bit of that inner strength she carried. See, while most people remember the elegance of Philly soul, the violins, the harmonies, the smooth grooves behind the scenes, it was a grind, constant sessions, late nights, endless deadlines. And through it all, Linda kept writing with her heart wide open. But around 1975, she got news that changed everything. She was diagnosed with breast cancer. Man, that's a word nobody ever wants to hear. She was only in her 20s, still so full of life, still chasing her creative peak. But instead of letting it stop her, Linda did what she always did. She turned pain into poetry. She didn't complain. She didn't make a scene. She just kept writing. Friends said that even while she was going through treatment, she would show up at the studio with her notebook, soft-spoken as ever, still working lines until they felt perfect. That's the thing about Linda: her strength wasn't loud. It was quiet, consistent, unbreakable. During this period, she started working beyond the stylistics. She teamed up with other artists, the Spinners, Johnny Mathis, Dusty Springfield, and brought her signature lyricism to new places. One of her collaborations with Mathis, "Life is a Song Worth Singing," became more than just a title. It was practically her personal mantra. Even while battling cancer, she was reminding the world to keep singing. Then came a song that would define her forever, one that carried her name across generations: "The Greatest Love of All." Originally written in 1977 for George Benson's soundtrack to the Muhammad Ali biopic The Greatest, the song was Linda's statement to the world. The lyrics: "I decided long ago never to walk in anyone's shadow. "If I fail, if I succeed, at least I'll live as I believe," were her message of self-worth, courage, and faith. It wasn't just a love song, it was a declaration of the human spirit. People didn't know it then, but Linda had written those words from a deeply personal place. She was fighting cancer, raising a family, still writing, still believing. The song was her way of saying, no matter what happens, I won't lose myself. Years later, when Whitney Houston recorded it in 1985, that song became a worldwide anthem. But Linda never got to see that moment. She passed away in April 1986, just weeks before Whitney's version hit #1. It's bittersweet, man. The world finally heard her words, sang them out loud, celebrated them, but she wasn't there to witness it. And that's the tragic beauty of her story. Even in her hardest moments, she kept giving the world music that healed others, even as she was the one who needed healing the most. One of the most emotional stories about her final years comes from her friendship with Phyllis Hyman. The two shared not just a love for music, but a deep emotional bond. Linda wrote "Old Friend" for Phyllis, a song so beautiful it can stop your heart. She finished the lyrics while in the hospital, already weakened from her illness. When Phyllis recorded it, you could feel Linda in every note. Phyllis once said that she cried the first time she read the lyrics. The song felt like Linda's farewell, gentle, spiritual, full of love. It wasn't written in sadness but in gratitude. That's who she was, someone who could look at pain and still find light inside it. In those last years, Linda's world became smaller, but her art became even bigger. She was a mother, a wife, a fighter, a writer. She'd spend her days with her husband, Stephen Lee, and their 2 daughters, keeping her life as normal as possible while continuing to write when she had the strength. Her friends said that she never lost her humor or her grace. Even when she was weak, she'd smile and say, "I just need to finish this song." Music wasn't her job, it was her purpose. And somehow, even as her body was giving out, her pen never stopped. That's the kind of spirit that makes her legacy so powerful. She didn't have the fame of Carole King or Joni Mitchell. She wasn't front and center on album covers. But in the hearts of those who knew, she was every bit their equal, maybe more. Because she wrote not from ego, but from empathy. By 1980, her health had begun to decline more rapidly. Still, she continued to write and occasionally collaborate with Tom Bell. Their friendship lasted through the years, no drama, no falling out, just mutual respect and a bond forged in melody. When she passed in 1986 at only 37, it left a silence in Philly that couldn't be filled. The community mourned quietly, like a family losing its storyteller. The radio stations played her songs back to back. People cried. Artists she had inspired, especially women, realized what she had accomplished in so short a time. And then, almost poetically, Whitney's version of "The Greatest Love of All" took off. It shot straight to #1, became one of the most iconic songs of the 1980 decade, and introduced Linda Creed's words to millions who had never known her name. It was like the universe was saying, "We didn't forget you." She never got her Hall of Fame induction during her lifetime, but her words live on every time someone sings that song. Every time someone says, "Learning to love yourself is the greatest love of all," they're speaking her truth. Linda Creed's story isn't just about tragedy, it's about transcendence, about how a young woman from Philly turned her pain into poetry, her heart into healing, and her short life into something eternal. And even though she didn't see the fame, the world finally caught up. By the late 1970 decade, Linda Creed had already carved her name quietly but permanently into the story of American soul music. But behind that beautiful catalog of timeless songs was a woman fighting battles few people knew about. Her success was built on grace, and her strength was hidden beneath that calm, poetic voice. What she didn't show to the world was the constant war she was waging within herself, a war between creativity and pain, between hope and fear. When Linda first learned she had breast cancer, she was only 26. Most people at that age are just getting started, still trying to figure out life. Linda was already a wife, a mother, and a respected songwriter. But suddenly, the future she had imagined, full of records, tours, and new lyrics, looked uncertain. Doctors told her it was serious. She went through surgeries, treatments, and long hospital stays, but through all of it, she never stopped writing. Her husband, Stephen Lee, once said that even during her weakest days, she kept her notebooks close. He'd come into the hospital room and find her scribbling new lines or humming a melody under her breath. When he asked what she was doing, she'd just smile and say, "Working, of course." That was Linda. She used her art to survive. Still, there were days when the pain hit hard. She would be in the middle of a lyric, her hands trembling, her mind foggy from medication, but she'd push through it. Music wasn't just her career, it was her therapy. Writing was how she processed her fear, her sadness, her hope. Her close circle of friends, including Phyllis Hyman, Tom Bell, and other musicians in Philly, knew what she was going through, but most of the world didn't. The record labels, the radio hosts, the journalists, they all saw her songs, not her struggle. Linda never wanted pity. She wanted her music to stand on its own, and maybe that's part of what made her story so bittersweet. She was giving the world so much love through her songs, but behind the scenes, she was fighting to keep her own life together. Cancer, as cruel as it is, also changes the way you see everything. For Linda, it made her more reflective. Her lyrics took on deeper meanings. Listen to The Greatest Love of All again. Knowing what she was going through, it hits different. Those words about self-belief, courage, and learning to love yourself weren't abstract ideas, they were survival mantras. But here's the thing, the music industry, for all its beauty, can also be cold. While Linda was battling for her life, the spotlight kept moving on. New acts, new sounds, new trends. The stylistics weren't dominating the charts anymore, and the Philly sound was slowly giving way to disco, funk, and eventually, the slick production style of the 1980 decade. That's the heartbreak of being a songwriter. 1 minute your songs are everywhere. The next minute, the world's chasing something new. For Linda, it wasn't about chasing hits, but you could tell it stung to see her era fading. She'd built her career on emotion, on timelessness, and suddenly everything around her was speeding up the music, the money, the culture. Still, she stayed graceful. No bitterness, no complaints, just that same soft smile and the words, "Music is forever." There's something deeply human about that. While her body was failing, her art was thriving. She poured her entire soul into every remaining lyric. She wasn't afraid of death. She was afraid of leaving unfinished songs behind. The people who knew her said she had this calm energy, almost angelic, even when she was exhausted. She'd walk into a studio, pale and fragile, but the moment the music started, her eyes would light up. The illness might have taken her strength, but it couldn't touch her spirit. Still, there were nights when she broke down. Her close friends recalled seeing her cry, not out of fear, but frustration. She wanted more time to write, to raise her daughters, to live. She wasn't ready to go. But then again, whoever is. Phyllis Hyman later said that Linda's strength inspired her own artistry. When Linda wrote Old Friend from her hospital bed, Phyllis could barely record it without tears. That song became her tribute to Linda after her passing, an emotional echo of their friendship, their shared love for honest music. What hurts most is how young Linda was 37 when she passed. Think about that, man. 37. At that age, most artists are just hitting their stride, finding their voice. Linda had already written more timeless songs than most will in a lifetime. And she did it while fighting for her life. After her death, many in the Philly soul community felt a huge void. Tom Bell was heartbroken, he said. Losing her was like losing half of himself. Her husband and daughters carried her memory with quiet pride, protecting her story from being forgotten. But here's the cruel irony. Even after all she gave, even after all the hits, the world still didn't give her the full credit she deserved. You'll hear her words sung by George Benson, by Whitney Houston, by the stylistics, but her name often gets lost in the fine print. That's the heartbreak of the underrated. Linda's conflict wasn't just with illness, it was with recognition. She knew her words mattered, but she also knew fame didn't always reward truth, and yet, she never let that change her. She never chased trends, never played politics, never compromised her message. She just kept writing from the same place she started, the heart. That's what made her different. That's what made her special. Even as the world moved on, her songs stayed. They outlived her, outlived the era, and outlived the industry noise. That, right there, is victory, not the kind with trophies or money, but the kind that lasts forever. And maybe, in some poetic way, that was Linda's destiny. To live a short, shining life, but to leave behind words that could heal the world long after she was gone. When Linda Creed passed in 1986, it felt like Philadelphia itself went silent for a moment. This wasn't just the loss of a songwriter, it was the loss of a voice that had defined an entire emotional language. The city that raised her, the sound she helped shape, the people she touched, everyone felt it. But what makes her story so incredible is what came after. Because man, Linda's pen never really stopped speaking. Even after she was gone, her words kept echoing through time, carried by voices she never even met. Not long after her passing, the universe seemed to honor her the only way it knew how. Through music. Whitney Houston's version of The Greatest Love of All dropped the same year Linda died and exploded. That record became one of the most powerful, uplifting anthems ever recorded. It topped charts across the world, crossed genres, crossed generations. You couldn't turn on a radio in 1986 without hearing Whitney's voice belting out Linda's words. Learning to love yourself is the greatest love of all. Those lyrics weren't just pretty, they were prophetic. Written by a woman who spent her final years fighting for her life, those words carried layers of truth most people didn't even realize. It was like Linda was speaking directly to every person struggling with fear, self-doubt, or pain. She left behind the perfect message: you are enough, and love begins with yourself. That's the beauty of Linda's legacy. She didn't just write love songs. She wrote life songs. Songs that told you it was okay to feel, to hurt, to hope again. Her lyrics were like mirrors. They showed you the best parts of being human, even when life wasn't perfect. And man, the influence didn't stop there. Throughout the 1990 and 2000 decades, artists kept rediscovering her catalog. R&B singers, pop icons, and even hip-hop producers started sampling the songs she wrote. You'd hear snippets of her melodies in tracks by Mary J. Blige, Alicia Keys, or babyface artists who carried the emotional honesty that Linda championed. Every time a new singer poured their heart into a soul ballad, they were walking a path Linda helped pave. Think about it. Before her, most women in songwriting were either behind the scenes or pigeonholed into love cliches. Linda broke that mold. She wrote with intellect and empathy. She could make romance feel philosophical and pain sound graceful. She made lyrics that men wanted to sing and women wanted to live by. Philly soul, the sound she helped define, became a blueprint for generations of music that followed from neo-soul to R&B slow jams to the modern pop ballad. Tom Bell would later say that without Linda's words, those lush Philly arrangements would have felt incomplete. She gave emotion to the orchestra, he said. That's a hell of a compliment coming from one of the greatest producers of all time. But it wasn't just the industry that carried her spirit. It was the fans. People who grew up in the 1970 decade, the ones who danced to "You Are Everything" at their prom or cried to "Break Up to Make Up" after heartbreak, never forgot. Even decades later, they comment on YouTube videos, sharing stories like, "My parents used to slow dance to this," or "I played this at my wedding." Those little testimonies? That's how legacy lives. And for the city of Philadelphia, Linda Creed became a symbol proof that greatness doesn't have to come loud or flashy. She was a hometown girl who made the world sing. There's even a scholarship foundation in her name, created to support cancer research and music education because she wanted young people to keep creating and keep living, no matter what they faced. Her name might not be carved into Hollywood sidewalks, but in Philly, it's carved in hearts. What's wild is how her influence reached artists far outside her genre. George Benson called "The Greatest Love of All" one of the most meaningful songs he ever recorded. Whitney Houston, who never met Linda, spoke about how deeply she connected with the lyrics as if they were written just for her. And years later, when Whitney herself passed, fans started quoting those same lines again, this time as a tribute to both women, two voices, two souls, forever linked by one song. It's poetic, man. The woman who wrote about learning to love yourself gave the world one of the greatest songs about love, period. And it came from someone who never even got to live long enough to see it change lives. Linda's writing continues to inspire lyricists today. You can hear her DNA in songs like Alicia Keys' If I Ain't Got You, in Babyface's Slow Confessionals, even in artists like H.E.R. and Jasmine Sullivan, that same blend of honesty and tenderness. They might not always name-drop Linda, but they're writing in her spirit. And beyond music, her story resonates with anyone who's ever felt overlooked. She's become a quiet icon for creatives who don't chase fame, people who just want to make something real. Because if Linda's life proves anything, it's that you don't have to be loud to be legendary. Every generation rediscovers her in its own way. Some find her through the stylistics, others through Whitney. Some stumble across her story online and are blown away by the fact that she wrote all those songs while fighting cancer. And every time the reaction is the same. How did I not know her name before? That right there is the heart of celebrity underrated. It's why her story matters. Because Linda Creed wasn't just a songwriter. She was a healer, a poet, a woman who turned her own fragility into strength and gave the world a blueprint for self-love long before it became a movement. If you strip away the fame, the charts, the record sales, what's left is impact. The kind that can't be measured in awards or numbers. Her songs are still played at weddings, graduations, funerals, life's biggest moments. Her lyrics remind people that love isn't just romance, it's resilience. That's what legacy looks like. So even though her name isn't always front and center, her spirit is woven into the very fabric of modern soul and R&B. Every time you hear someone sing about self-worth, empathy, or unconditional love, you're hearing Linda Creed's influence. Gone too soon, yes, but forgotten? Never. Her story reminds us that sometimes the loudest voices aren't the ones holding the mic, they're the ones holding the pen. So here we are, man at the end of Linda Creed's story. A woman who wrote the words that made the world fall in love, but whose name still hides in the shadows of the songs she gave us. It's wild, right? She wasn't just writing about love. She was living it through her passion, her courage, her fight. And even though life took her too soon, her spirit never left. Every time You Are Everything plays at a wedding, every time People Make the World Go Round sparks nostalgia, every time The Greatest Love of All gives someone strength, that's Linda speaking. That's her soul, still singing. She turned her pain into beauty, her struggle into legacy, and the world finally caught up to the message she left behind. That real love, the kind that lasts, starts from within. You know, man, it's crazy how someone who never chased fame ended up writing some of the most famous songs in the world. But that's the thing about underrated legends, they don't need spotlights. Their art shines for them. So, what do y'all think? Does Linda Creed deserve her own biopic? A Hall of Fame induction? Or maybe, just maybe, the best tribute we can give her is to keep her music alive, to keep playing it, sharing it, and feeling it. Because at the end of the day, Linda Creed taught us something timeless. That love, whether in a song, a friendship, or yourself, really is the greatest gift of all. Rest in power, Linda Creed. Your words still move the world.